right, we are back with the Impact Effect podcast, and we have an amazing guest today, Dr. Justin Moseley. And we're going to dive into a couple topics. But as you know, most importantly, we start off each episode with understanding what does impact mean to you, and how do you show up and impact the world today?
So I would say impact is positive change because you have the ability to change the trajectory of someone's life by something you say or the impact you make on them today can change their entire future. So for me, how I'm making an impact, one, just had my second TED Talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think back to my first one, talking about impact. One of the comments on the YouTube video, a mom said, my 9-year-old daughter watched your video and said now she wants to wake up with a purpose. So one, that a 9-year-old would even watch my TED Talk, but that she now wants to wake up with a purpose because of something I said. I think that's impact.
Totally. And that ripple effect and that the effect, the impact, whatever word we choose, sometimes we don't even know is happening.
That's right, yeah.
But sometimes you get nuggets like that where you're scrolling through your video, it's been a couple months, you're like, hey, let's see what's going on with my TED Talk, and then boom, you know?
Yeah, and that's the hard part because a lot of times we put out stuff and we're like, I don't know if anybody's listening. Does anyone care? And they are. They're behind the scenes watching it, and it is making an impact. So for people that are frustrated and they're ready to give up, I mean, I've been there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
shooting content is work. But there's always someone watching, and you never know what that one thing that you say could restore a marriage, keep someone from taking their own life.
Totally.
So much opportunity. Just keep showing up authentically. Whatever's on your heart, share it with the world.
Yeah. And how do you, this is a great topic because this is something that, you know, we've got the podcast studio, people are, you know, interested, they see me putting out content, they're asking, hey, what are you doing, what systems are you using, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people have a lot to say, but they don't put themselves out there because they think no one's listening.
Right, yeah.
For someone like that who may be starting or someone who may be thinking about giving up, what advice do you have? Obviously, your TED Talk, that situation, impacting a 9-year-old, like that's massive. But what about someone maybe who isn't on a large scale like a TED stage or just, you know, renting a studio for $100 and using Opus clips themselves and doing it all? Because it's a lot of work. You said it's work, and when you're doing it yourself, I mean, just being vulnerable here, this is a reschedule of our episode because I messed some things up with equipment earlier this week, right? What advice do you give someone in that moment who's struggling, thinks that no one's watching, thinks that, you know, this is really hard and it may not be getting the positive comments, the views, the exchange of value, the thank yous? What would you say to that person?
I think it starts with what's the goal? Is it that I want all these views and all these likes and all these things, and that's the standard I'm setting? Or is it, I just want to get this message out? Because you can get frustrated and think, why did this video not do well? Why did I only get a certain amount of likes? And to be honest, a lot of people watch videos these days and they don't like it at all. So you don't even know if they're watching. But if your goal is to truly have impact and you have a message on your heart, just share it.
Yeah.
Just start. And the problem is, a lot of times we compare our step one to somebody's 101, and they're so far ahead of us. And I was on this guy's podcast, and he gets over 50, I'm going to get the number right, 50,000 downloads a month on his podcast. So a lot of people are watching. But he said early on, he almost gave up because 50 people would watch. And he got to the point where he's like, he was about to throw in the towel, and somebody from Japan actually emailed him. And he said, because of your podcast, I decided not to take my own life. And it's so crazy. Somebody on the other side of the world who he never knew could message him because he consistently showed up.
Yep. So
one, you got to be consistent though, because if you just want to do some content here or there, you'll never get any traction. But it comes down to, if your goal is truly to make impact, just share your heart and people will resonate with it. They're not looking for the next message from Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield or Gary Vee or Ed Milet. Yeah, they probably listen to them too, but they need to hear your message. They tune into you, maybe just something scrolling across their feed and something you said impacted them for that day, it's worth it.
You said something really important there, and I don't want to skip over it because one, you flow beautifully, and that was great, and that hit me in the heart just hearing it from someone else, right? Because I've struggled with it. We've all gone through it. I'm sure you have too. But you said just share your heart. I want to dive into that because I think a lot of people are putting out information on content today. I was doing this for a while. I still tend to do it sometimes. And I wasn't sharing my heart. I wasn't sharing my beliefs. I was worried with the person who disagrees. I was worried with, I just want to sound smart and clever and intelligent. I'm using all logic and I'm talking just business and strategy, right? And someone who consults around strategy, there's a reason why my content was like that. But when I started sharing my heart, when I started sharing how I felt, when I started sharing how other people felt, when I started talking about the frustrations, started talking about the things that put me in absolute bliss, I noticed there was more human connection around that.
Right. Yeah.
Do you feel that? Because I mean, you're like share from your heart. I'm assuming you've probably put out content in both facets, but talk to me a little bit about how you navigate that and like, how do you share your heart?
Yeah, I think the reason that worked for you is because people related to it.
Yep.
It wasn't just, here, do these 3 things. Here's the top 5 things. Like, all that stuff's out there. But when you share, like, this is a struggle I went through. This is, I forgot the SD cards and we had to reschedule a podcast. Like, that's real stuff. People are like, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So when you share stuff people can relate to, they're like, man, I like this guy. I want to consume more of his stuff. So I really think that's what it's all about. So first off, just start.
Yep.
Start putting yourself out there. What I found, and I know you found too, the more you just started putting stuff out there, you realize what resonated with you to share.
Yep.
And this whole human connection, you realize, man, that's a strength of yours. You never would have got to that had you have not started putting out the content over and over. So stay consistent with it. Don't compare your content to someone else's. Go back to what is the authentic you. And I went back and I surveyed some clients from years ago that signed up with me. I was like, what made you want to do business with me? And of course, in business, you got a problem to solve. But a common theme through all of them was, you have the life I want to live. And that's what they saw through social media. They're like, you go on date nights with your wife. You guys are traveling. You're taking care of your health. You're doing all these things. That's the life I want to live. And because you lived it and I got to live it through you, I want to do business with you.
Makes total sense. Total sense.
That's what it's all about. Showing them more of who you are. Because with any business, they want to trust you. That's the first thing. Do I trust this person? I can Google the next business and just find somebody who can solve my problem, but do I trust them? And social media content is the biggest way to build trust quickly if you're willing to be vulnerable and open.
Yeah, totally. How have you used kind of your lifestyle without kind of going too deep or personal and kind of holding some boundaries, right? Because as we know, like everybody says share everything, but in reality, most people want to hold things close or tight. Have you navigated that conversation with maybe your wife, or how do you kind of go about sharing your lifestyle but not having some type of boundary?
Right, yeah. That it is different for everyone. Some people are like, I don't want my kids on social at all. Even Gary Vee rarely posts about his family. He's all about what he does in business. I think that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
How much are you comfortable with? But a lot of people don't share because they think, who would care about this? Who would care that I work out? Who would care that I did? I started posting just selfies in the gym just to stay committed for myself. Like I'm showing up today. And I had people reach out to me, like say that motivated them to actually get to the gym.
Nice.
So it's like you never know what you share could mean to somebody in that moment when they see it.
Totally.
And one of my mentors talked about, he didn't like posting stories for a long time. And he was like, but I think about, he looked up to The Rock. And he was like, if The Rock gave you a behind the scenes into his life and says, this is what I eat for breakfast. This is how I work out. This is when I go to the studio. He was like, I would just follow his life around and I'd get an inside look. He's like, there's people that want to do that with you.
Yeah.
I want to see behind the scenes of your podcast studio, the cool people that you meet, the events that you throw. They want to see the behind the scenes, not just the highlight reel of you standing on the stage,
Yeah.
but what went on. And that's what you're very good at sharing, the real stuff that goes around it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, at least for me, I went through this phase of looking up to certain people at that stature,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
And then it's like what they show. But I'm not at that stature, right? And
right,
like the
right.
reality of it is I've seen behind those scenes,
Yeah,
and that ain't pretty either,
for sure. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
how can I actually show what's going right and going wrong and not just what's going right in order to help and bring resonance and alignment with folks, right? Because my whole thing is like the reason why I put out the content is hopefully to help someone, but also to spark an opportunity to connect.
For sure. Yeah.
Because I just love humans. I love conversing. I love getting feedback. Like the last couple of weeks have been awesome. We've got the conference Impact Effect 24 coming up in September, but I've been talking to people and like getting feedback around it. We've switched stuff and we've kind of moved this around and we didn't do this, and that feedback is so important. But it starts with a relationship because that person has to give you honest feedback.
Right, yeah. And that's what I admire about you is getting that feedback. Because a lot of people want to throw a conference and just they think of who are the speakers, what are the deliverables. We're going to speak on this, but not really focusing on what's in it for them.
Yeah.
Those people that are sitting in the seats, how you start there. You say, what benefit can I give them? Then I build the speakers that can speak into that.
Yeah.
Then I put the whole event together based on what they want.
Totally.
And that's what everyone should do. Even starting with your content, don't make it about you. What's in it for them? That person that's sitting there scrolling through their phone on the other side, what can they get out of what you're about to share? And start there.
It's such a key point too. Like, I've made the mistake of, speakers pushing the content they want to speak about
Yeah.
at the conference, or I only have this keynote and I've got these many followers and this following and this brand. This is what I'm going to speak on. And
Yeah.
I had a conversation last week with someone and they just didn't fit.
Yeah.
They've got millions of followers. They're local in town,
Yeah.
easy to get to, they're available, but
Right.
the content didn't line up with content around growing you as a journey to be the best leader. And that's the theme, right? Like,
Right.
we want to lead with human connection. We want to lead with strategy. We want to lead with clarity, vision. That talk didn't fit into that. And I think those are the decisions we need to make in order to have the impact, pun intended,
Yeah.
at some of these events.
Yeah.
So speaking of events, let's talk about TED Talks, man.
Yes.
Like, second TED Talk recently, crushed the first one. I was there in person, felt the emotion, watched the ripple effect, watched people's eyes light up, saw a ton of people lean in, which is like my number one indicator when I speak. I'm like, if I see people leaning in, it's resonating, there's impact. How did it feel, man? Second time around.
Yeah, it was amazing. And as you know, so congrats on, you got a TED Talk coming up as well. So it's an honor just to be able to be on that stage. And for me, it goes back to Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I watched that back in 2011-ish, whenever it came out on YouTube. And it just moved me how I could share such a simple idea, but it could help people all over the world. So it had been on my bucket list for a long time. And then in 2022, I did my first one, and it was an amazing experience to know, especially for me, coming from, I had a tremendous fear of public speaking growing up, which is what I shared about this last TED Talk. And so the first one I shared about
Did everybody just hear that? He's on his second TED Talk and he had a fear of public speaking. Yeah. And he's done 2 TED Talks, crushed it, tons of views, tons of opportunities. It's excelled his life, I'm sure. We'll dive into that here shortly, but you can do it too. That's the point I wanted to make.
And that's where the realness and the authenticity comes out, because I don't want to stand up there and be like, look, I'm some confident speaker, that's why I get these opportunities. No, that's actually where the theme of this TED Talk came from, is after I shared the first one, and then I've started speaking a lot, sharing content, people would reach out and be like, man, that's amazing, I'm excited for you, I would love to do something like that, but I'm terrified. And he's like, and one guy in particular was like, man, you're just so confident, it just comes easy for you. And I said, this did not come easy for me. This was work. So I want people to understand from where I came from. I couldn't speak in front of a small group of people, let alone be on a stage in front of a lot of people, or something that's going to go all over the world like a TEDx talk. So if I can do it, you can do it. So I'm gonna start putting out a bunch of content, letting people know that that is my story, and giving them the tips and the things that I did along the way that helped me, so they can start to overcome their fear and speak with confidence and make the impact that they're called to make. And I think that's what a lot of people have, is they have this feeling inside. I want to make an impact, but I'm terrified, so I just hold my message in.
Totally.
And that's what I did for far too long. I created a story, and you heard my TED Talk from a second grade. Is when my first anchor of you can't speak in public happened. You can't speak up. Your voice does not need to be heard. Those were the stories that were created, and they live with me most of my life. From then getting into college and taking a speech class and having a panic attack during the speech and almost failed the speech class, anchored in. See, public speaking is not for you. But I knew in my heart I had a message to share. And I believe everybody listening, there's a message inside of you the world desperately needs to hear.
Goosebump moment.
Yeah, and that's where, going back to what's in it for them, I knew I wanted to do another talk, and this was really stirring in my heart. So I was like, man, I want to speak to those people, that they have a message, but they've been holding it back. And because I was there, I lived it. So I want to, I help share my journey and some tips along the way, and I'm going to continue to share that through my content and things like that. But I definitely encourage anyone who, even if you are a speaker, because after the TEDx talk there live, people that heard it, one girl came up and said, I got to talk in 2 weeks, and there's something I'm going to use from your talk for my talk. Another girl was, hey, I'm a speech coach, and I never had the fear of public speaking, so I never knew what that was like, so I'm going to use what you said with my people.
Wow.
So, but if you definitely, I think everybody, like I said, has a message to share. So watch my TEDx talk. Hopefully it will encourage you to get your message out to the world.
Yeah, totally. And if you haven't seen his first TED Talk, you need to watch that too. Like, let's not skip over number one. Number one's pretty fire. Number two, I mean, I was emotional in the audience. You know, it hit me in the heart and soul and just connected deeply and gave me encouragement. And I think I shared this with you when we were talking last week, but, you know, after seeing your talk, I had an 8-hour drive to West Virginia and then another 7-hour drive back to Nashville. And that inspiration allowed me to create for 8 hours on that drive back. Right. And it allowed me to roll out Deep and Over Dinner, which was a concept that I believe would help people, but I was actually timid on putting it out there. Right. So just by your talk and the emotion tied to it and how you navigated the speaking world pushed me to go launch something that I've been wanting to launch, and actually inspired me to dedicate the time on that drive to focus just on that one thing. Wow. And then last week you got to experience it.
Yeah.
And we had a raving fans. I mean, someone texted me yesterday saying, man, I just been thinking about that dinner and that connection and how I need to show up in some of those tough conversations. So kudos to you on the ripple effect in so many ways, right? Because that ripple effect his talk on public speaking is about speaking, but it's more about you sharing something, an idea or a thought that you know will impact someone.
Right.
And the modality for me was attempting this new event where, yes, I was speaking, I was facilitating, I was hosting, but I was still scared. And I speak on stages. I've been throwing events. Yeah. We just did a tally, like over 100 events since 2020.
Yeah.
So it's real, right? And at my level, with events, I wouldn't say speaking, but with events, I've kind of done it. I've seen it. I've been at the Tom Brady's house for an event. I've been at Robert Kraft's, owner of Patriots. Like, I've seen massive scale. I've done stuff in hangars with private jets. Like, I've seen the scope of all types of events, and I still needed to hear your talk to have the inspiration to make this new concept, this new idea come to fruition.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's impact right there.
That
is impact. And even if you never told me the story and the impact it had on you, that happens all the time. Like, people are impacted by something you put out, and you may never know it because the person might not reach out to you, and they might not even realize the same situation could have happened, and they come and run events, and they turn into other events and other events, all because of something you said. you may never even know it. They might not even consciously know it. They might just thought, hey, I had this idea. But what you say matters.
It's so cool. Like, I'm just thinking back of an example. You know, there's a woman, Mildred. She bought a conference ticket last year, came experience Impact Effect 23 in October. Um, she hasn't come back to any events, right? So I just was like, oh, I haven't seen her. Well, she posted something on LinkedIn wearing the T-shirt, this T-shirt, where it says, "Create impact, break barriers," and the post was around, every time I wear this shirt, it leads to a conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's an example of, she came, had an experience. It was a good experience to where she represents the brand. She wears this T-shirt that I'm wearing right now, which engages in new opportunity and conversation. And who would have thought that, like, I didn't even think about the T-shirts I gave to everybody. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just like, in any way, shape, or form, where there's alignment to what you're doing, the concept, how you're seeking to help, how you're showing up. You are showing up. You talked about consistency earlier.
That's right.
There's impact being made, and it may take 6-7 months from someone that you haven't seen or heard from, but that's still occurring in the background. And when she has that conversation of, I got this at Impact Effect, maybe there's an opportunity for someone to now join us in the Impact Effect 24 who may not have had the opportunity or the experience to now grow this year as a better leader and create more change and more impact.
Yeah. And the cool thing that you do too is you actually reach out for that authentic feedback from them too, because you want to make sure, one, they had a great experience, but also, what can I do the next time?
Totally.
How can I make this a new and unique experience? Because you don't want to do the same event over and over. I've been there, done that. So you always are like, what's next? How can I bring more value to the people? And even if you never would have reached back out to her, you still made an impact. Even if you didn't know it, there's so many people that were in the crowd. Like, you've had an impact on every single one of them. Even the people that were half paying attention. There was something that was said, because we all do that. We daydream, because we start thinking about the next idea. You inspire an idea here, in the next 30 minutes, I didn't hear the speaker at all because I was thinking about that thing. But that's the thing they needed to hear.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about events. It's like, man, they can come away with this one idea that can change their life.
Totally. So talk to me a little bit, and I know we've only got about 10 more minutes, but talk to me a little bit about, because I'm sure there's people listening to this. There's also an interest for me, as I have a TED Talk coming up this year. Talk about the journey leading up to that day. Because I know you, you know, and when we're at your TED Talk, I had a great conversation with your wife, Courtney, and there's a lot of alignment between us with what she was saying. Like, we prepare like madmen sometimes.
Right.
We're dialed in, right? We put a lot of effort and prep and practice. We get coaching. We get opportunity and feedback from others. We share. We ask for help. But can you share with us the nitty gritty? Like, the real behind the scenes leading up, and like, maybe if there was a vulnerable moment, maybe if there was I mean, I know your mind is really solid and you coach and help people through that, but I also know, like, there may at one point where you're like, is this the right talk? I'm going to stop talking and let you get into it, because I'm really intrigued, especially with your such strong mindset, how you navigated and showed up. Because folks, I went to the TED Talk. I saw it live. Justin is 50 tiers above every person that I witnessed on that stage. The flow, the confidence, the prep. I mean, the slides messed up on everybody's. Justin was the only person that I saw hold composure and can get right back to that moment and that correct mindset and crush it after. Like, I've seen most of those people struggle with fear, and I've seen the draining and emotion when those slides, but like, you brought it back, you rolled through, your composure, flow was great. Like, that was impressive. How'd you get to that point, man?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. So, I mean, yeah, there was a point, because I knew from probably a year before that this was the talk that I wanted to give. It was on my heart that I struggled with the fear of public speaking most of my life, and I was able to overcome it and make an impact in the world. And I want to show others how to do that, because I know so many people feel that feeling. I've got a message to share, but I don't know how. I'm scared. So I knew that was the message. But up until even a month before, my talk wasn't even ready. And there was because I had a busy schedule this entire year. It's been back to back to back. And there was like 10 weeks straight. I was traveling, speaking at events and conferences. And I questioned at one point, a couple months out, like, should I just move this? Because it is such a great platform. Like, I want to deliver my best. So I was like, if I'm not going to be prepared, if I'm not going to give 100%, I'm not going to go.
I had this thought already. Just raising my hand. Yeah. I had this thought already. Keep going. Yeah.
Then it's like the story started coming. So the more you just, again, go back to what's in it for them. And what would that person need to hear? And then how can I use my story to relate to them? So the stories started coming. The things I wanted to share started coming, but they were not all pieced together. It wasn't formed into a talk. So that all didn't happen until the last month, really.
Wow.
But I'd already, here's the hack, and I'll bring it together at the end. But what I started was I'd already visualized myself being on the stage, felt the composure, and felt the impact that I was going to make. It started with that. So I knew the talk was going to come together. And speaking of impact, when was your event? Like just a week or two before my TED Talk was one of your events here in Nashville, and Janine Driver spoke there.
Yep.
And she even talked about like, get your talk down, but then there's something might hit you the night before, 2 nights before, and that actually happened to me. So,
and those who don't know Janine Driver, she's got 12 million views on her TED Talks.
Right.
So we're talking about someone who's done it 4 times and has crushed it. 2 of those went massive viral.
Yeah. So it was really probably a couple weeks before. I just took, I think it was a Friday or Saturday, just took all day. I'm going to just put this into the talk. I've got all the parts and pieces. The stories are there. Let me just formulate this thing. And the good thing is, like now we've got so many reps in, like that comes easy. Yeah. Once we get it down, like we could go in and do a talk this afternoon that we're not even prepared for because we can think, process it quickly, and deliver a great message.
Yeah.
So I had the parts and pieces. I put it together like 2 weeks before, started practicing it. Visualizing is the key. But then like a week before is when Janine said that, and then I started just processing and praying about what I wanted to share. And the line hit me that I shared at the TEDx talk of, if you would have told me, I said, I'm standing here on the TEDx stage in this iconic red circle. If you would have told me that years ago, I would have said you're crazy. And that's a line that like was so from the heart, but something I needed to share to remind people of, I would have thought you were crazy if years ago you'd have told me one day you're standing on that TEDx stage. So whatever
you're making me emotional over here, bro. I'm like, Jesus.
So you've got a message to share. Don't get in your own head about why you can't share it. So that line just came to me like a week before, and I was like, that's one I've got to get into this talk. But then when it comes to the hack that I use for all the talks, because one of my mentors says, the key to being a great speaker is 1,000 speeches, which is true. You get out there and you start speaking, you get in the reps, you're going to get better.
Totally.
So then how I hack that is, it's hard you've been to tons of events. It's hard to go out there and get 1,000 speaking gigs. But in your mind, you can get 1,000 quickly. You can visualize yourself. And I know, I'd go deep into the mindset side of things and the neuroscience about it, but your mind can't tell the difference between something real and something vividly imagined.
Yep.
And vividly imagined is the key. You can't just think about speaking, but you put yourself in that situation. You feel what it feels like. It goes back to, I did this before my first TED Talk, before I even got the stage and got the invite. I saw myself standing in the circle. I heard the buzz of the microphone and the speakers. I felt the heat of the lights. I could see myself looking into the crowd, and I could barely see their faces because the lights were so bright. All the things I vividly imagined came true. Even from looking out the stage and speaking, and people's heads were nodding with me.
Yeah.
Like all of that came true from my visualization. That's what gave me the confidence to know, like, hey, I'm going to be prepared. If the slides mess up, I'm all right. I'll go right back to where I was. It was that visualization over and over that gave me the reps that I needed to give me the confidence.
It's so important, man. It's so important. And it's funny, too, like, the reps. I can't count how many times I've given a speech to the mirror.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, and more so now, I'm closing my eyes. Like, I used to look at myself and really, and then I start critiquing, like, oh, Jim, like when you said that, you squinted, and so then I started closing my eyes, and then bringing me onto a stage.
Yeah.
I gotta spend more time with Dr. Justin over here for this visualization, because I think I struggle to get all those pieces. Like, I think about like the heat of the lights. Like when you said that, that just hit me, because that's something that I haven't put into play. But the buzzing of the noise, the microphone, like, and for me, just being vulnerable, like I get sweaty palms, and they get really sweaty when I go on stage.
Right.
So one of the things that I do is I imagine my hands sweating and holding that cold metal microphone, and that brings me right into that place.
Right. Yeah.
But I gotta get more granular on my atmosphere, the lights, the heat. Not like these details are so important because you have to do it vividly.
Yeah, and the good thing is, because you've got so many reps speaking, you know what it feels like. You know what the sound of your voice through the speakers sounds like. You know what a buzz of a microphone sounds like. So by visualizing it over and over, nothing's new to you on the stage. That's a lot of times people get the fear because they never heard their voice in a microphone, and then all of a sudden that just freaks them out and they start speaking. This is new.
Yeah.
So by rehearsing it over and over, it just makes you so much more comfortable and more confident while being on the stage. And the cool thing about it is, once you've done it, you can recreate it. You've got these events. And one thing I do think is very important. So you've ran a lot of events. It's hard to do a live in-person event and get 100 people in a room. That's hard. Social media, you can put out a video and get 100 views right there. You don't have to go to a conference to be the keynote speaker to make an impact. You can, in the comfort of your home, shooting with your phone, and just speak to the world and reach 100, 300, 1,000 plus people right there. So don't discount that. You don't have to be on the stage. You don't have to be one of Jim's speakers. Definitely come to his event. But you have the ability to impact people right through the palm of your hand in your phone.
Totally. And it's so powerful. Like, and it's, you hear it from Dr. Justin, you've heard it from me, you've heard it from other guests on the podcast. I hear it almost every other week. Like stories around, I didn't want to do this, or I didn't want to put this content out, but I did it, and if something was on my heart, and I put it out there, and then this happened, or this happened, or this happened. Like Brandon T. Adams, you just had Brandon on your podcast recently. A friend of mine I met over a year ago here in Nashville. He told me a story. He had 15 views on a Facebook video, and one of those views turned into someone who made him millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
And it's like, you never know. And he was doing this was years ago. Like, I love Brandon because he'll show videos from back then. Like, I can't wait to get to that point because I just started a couple years ago. But like, when I, like the 8-10 year mark, I'm going to be like, that's what Jim looked like when he started. And this is where I'm at today. So I love that Brandon does that. But like, I just constantly hear so many of these stories of impact, financial opportunity, relationship opportunity, human capital. Like I did this video and this person liked it, then they invited me here and this happened, and there's so much power in it. And for someone who didn't want to publicly speak, for someone who, from starting from the second grade, there was those anchors of, I can't do this. There was that negative impact. There was negative perspective around it, to someone who's done 2 TED Talks, to someone who speaks all over the world, to someone who runs a massively successful business, 2 businesses in fact. You're hearing it from him here today, and he's telling you that if he can do it, you can do it. So my goal today is to just, again, recap and push y'all to put something out there. You know, if it's something you learned and you have a different spin on it, share it. If it's something you heard and you disagree with, share it. Give people the opportunity to hear your voice because they may need that opportunity.
Yeah. And the importance of just start to share, because you never know what will resonate, is a perfect example. First time I think I had you on the podcast, you shared about miscarriage. And you said right before that you had just started sharing it, and it made impact on people around you that you didn't even know that they needed to hear that message. But because you just opened your mouth and started talking about it, other people deeply resonated with that.
Someone told me, I didn't know that you were going through that. You have a perfect family. Everything is perfect. And I'm like, I'm doing a bad job of putting out content. Like that hit me so deep because I'm like, my life is not perfect.
Right.
I have challenges every week.
Yep.
Right? Like, yeah, I've got a strong mindset. I'm a little crazy. I take a lot of risk, but like that comes with problems. That comes with headaches. That comes with, I mean, I just had a deal in real estate because I was so tired working on the conference the other night. I forgot to do something and messed it up. That's not a good thing, right?
Right.
But that's real.
Yep.
That happens, and that's my life. And when that person said that, they were relating. They had 3 miscarriages. They almost didn't try. And when they heard that story of me telling Caitlin, I don't know if I want to have another kid. To now putting content out celebrating there's a boy on the way in October, like that's real. Like that boy may never have been here if I didn't have to navigate that and deal with that and talk to Caitlin deeply about it and what I was scared and fearful and my concerns. But then I put out a video about that and 5 or 6 people are like, we had that conversation too. Do it. So I'm not actually, in those moments, I may be resonating and helping them, but they're actually helping me.
Absolutely.
That person that said,
therapy to this
I've gone through that, do it, you're going to regret it. My wife was really the conversation that sent me overboard, but that was, and I say overboard in a good way, like, I wanted to do this, I was just honestly freaking horrified and scared. Especially with the last one, Caitlin almost dying. Like,
right, you saw what she went through emotionally and everything else too.
And we're still going through stuff like that. There's still concerns, right? We got an ultrasound last week and it's like everything's great, but I'm still scared and nervous.
For sure.
Even though we get good information, right? Because there's just reality to that. But in turn, and this is something that most people don't share, is like, I'm actually getting a benefit from putting out that content too. And I know I don't do it for me, but in reality, like a win-win occurs when there's actual true human connection, right? You hear me talk about this all the time, like everything should be a win-win. It shouldn't be a sacrifice left or right for you or for the other person. But when you have true human connection, both people are winning. And in that case, that video caused human connection and we both won. That person felt validated that they're not broken or wrong and they've gone through the same thing. I felt validated that, wow, someone else struggled and almost didn't have more kids and pushed through it and everything was great. We can do this too, right? Like there's that win-win because there was deep connection.
For sure. And something important to point out for people, that video you put out didn't need to reach millions of people.
No.
Even if it were just one person had that connection with, it's worth it. So that's the heart behind putting out the content. Not how can this go viral or what, no. How can this help someone?
True.
And then create that mutual exchange that we talked about.
All right, last question for you. I've been waiting the whole episode to drop this one. What advice, top one thing you would advise someone who's seeking a TED Talk or has a TED Talk coming up?
Yeah.
Like out of all your talks, all your stuff, what kind of was the real big game changer now that you've gone through it twice that you can share with someone?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece, and I spoke to you about it and some others that have asked about speaking at TED, because different TED Talks have different themes.
Yep.
The biggest thing is stay true to the theme on your heart. Don't try to modify a talk to hit the theme of the conference because I wanted to land a TED Talk. No. What is that message that you want to share with the world? And just focus on that. People know if you have an agenda. If you just want to get people to your conference to make money out of them, they feel that. But if you truly have the heart to serve them and you want to give them impact by coming to your conference, that's a whole different feeling.
Totally.
So same thing with TED. Like an organizer can tell if you're just trying to get a stage for credibility and authority and to sell books or do whatever, versus, no, I believe this message can change the world. That's why I want to be on your stage. So find your message, and that's number one what TED's about, is having an idea worth spreading. So what is your idea that you think can change the world, and then go take it to the world?
That's so powerful. I mean, that's what really my bottleneck was in applying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I couldn't resonate it right back to the theme, and I almost didn't apply.
Right.
And then I poured out what was on my heart and got accepted.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think of it like that was my biggest struggle, of that and imposter syndrome,
Right. It's real.
and then the same thing with you, like maybe I should punt this a year. My conference is the day before. I
Right.
got a lot going on. We got a baby coming
Yep.
at any moment, the week after, 2 weeks after. So I've definitely gone through those thoughts and struggles and challenges. But I think you're right. I think that is, for me,
Mhm.
that was the biggest piece of advice that got me to apply and stay true to what I want to talk about.
Yeah. Because you can crush any talk, any theme, but it doesn't mean as much to you being on that platform if you don't share from your heart and a message that was given to you to give to the world.
And I think too, like, I've done a lot of talks that were just logic and education.
Mhm. Yep.
I think the best talks I've seen from Ted is I feel the heart, I feel the conviction, I feel the emotion that the speaker has tied to the concept.
Right. Yeah.
And it could be clever, it could be witty, it could be smart, but there's a different feeling to that type of talk compared to something that's from the heart and truly what you believe in and emotional.
Yeah. It goes back to that saying, they may not remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And that goes back to one of the reasons I wanted to speak even early on in elementary school. There was a guy that came and spoke at an assembly, and I don't remember what he talked about, but I remember how it made me feel. And I was like, man, I want to be on the stage making people feel like that. But unfortunately, I had the anchors in, those stories telling me you can't do that. And I believed them for far too long, which is why I want to get this message out to people that don't believe those stories. There's a message you can share, but I still go back to, I remember how he made me feel, and that's what drives me today is I get to do that. I overcame the fear, the doubt, the worry, imposter syndrome, all the things to share my message with the world, and I want to help others do that.
I love it. I love it. Man, so powerful today. What a conversation,
Good
man.
stuff, man. Always good stuff, conversation with you, man.
Totally. Well, I hope Dr. Justin Moseley had made you feel like you can go do a TED Talk today, because I know he has had that impact on me. He's had that impact on others. Justin's spoken at my events. He supports my events. And there's always someone that always inquires about you. Like, that Justin guy is a good guy. What's he up to? I'd like to spend more time with him. Do you know when he's speaking? So here it is. He's speaking at Impact Effect 24. So come check him out. Come spend some time with us. We've got a ton of other speakers too. This isn't a pitch to join us, but if you want to spend time with Dr. Justin, he'll be there September 18th. And we'd be happy to navigate a conversation around you using your voice for impact. So show up, grab your ticket. We'll see you there, and we're looking forward to chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Impact Effect podcast, and we'll see you soon.